Evolution of Cyber Encryption to World War I. By Darius Davis, Noah Dyer, Brian Denham, Hunter Wilkins, and Chandler Evans. When people think of encryption, they usually only think of modern technology. However, encryption has existed long before the computer and played a major role in World War I. The Zimmermann telegram played possibly the biggest role in the cryptographic field during this time, as it was a major deciding factor for American intervention in the Great War. The U.S. enlisted millions in preparation for their 1917 entry, and among the most famous was the first all-African American unit in the American Army's history, the Harlem Hellfighters. The earliest known people to utilize the encryption process were the Egyptians in 1900 BC, and they called it the hieroglyph. They did this with pictures to denote characters, which in turn came together to form stories and messages about their lifestyle. The hieroglyphic alphabet could be broken into 4 categories: alphabetic signs, syllabic signs, word signs, and determinatives. These all can be read from right to left, and vice versa. In total, there are more than 1,100 hieroglyphic illustrations that make up the writing system. Another ancient civilization that employed the system of encryption were the Assyrian merchants of 1500 BC. The merchants used a system called intaglio, which was essentially used to identify a trader with a certain trade. They would inscribe their symbol into a piece of flat stone, to be used almost as a receipt for proof of transactions. Germany was an early adopter of encryption in World War I, due to their submarine cables being cut early in the war. Germany was forced to find different ways of communicating covertly, hiding text in news dispatches, radio, and the use of other countries' telegram cables. When the Germans drafted the Zimmermann telegram, they encrypted it by using a code known as the Lotteriechef, which translates to lottery cipher. It was a 2-part cipher consisting of 4 digits, and these groups were added at random to the code's vocabulary. For this reason, the Lotteriechef was a difficult cipher to decrypt. The United Kingdom had a sophisticated code cracking division, known as Room 40. The British eavesdropped on American communication cables and monitored envoys sent by the Swedish Foreign Ministry, which was also used by Germany. The British encrypted their messages by using a cipher invented in 1854, known as the Playfair cipher. The secret key is formed by arranging a 25-letter alphabet into a 5x5 matrix. Different keys can be obtained by different possible arrangements of alphabets into the matrix. This made decryption of Britain's ciphers incredibly difficult. America, unlike the British, were nowhere near as advanced in such things. The United States used a cipher known as A1. Herbert Yardley, a code clerk for the State Department, was able to crack the A1 code in less than 2 hours. He went on to state, "There is no need to send spies into Germany when they have Colonel House's reports of interviews with the emperor, princes, and industry leaders." Another route the Germans used was a route right under American noses. Germany sent encrypted messages to their embassy in Washington, D.C., using American diplomatic cables. This continued up until the U.S. joined the war in 1917, and interestingly enough, one of the final catalysts to get the Americans to enter the war was because of a German-sent telegram. In the January of 1917, British cryptographers deciphered a telegram from German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann to the German Minister to Mexico, von Eckhardt, offering United States territory to Mexico in return for joining Germany in the Great War. British naval intelligence had intercepted the telegram and deciphered it. While the British authorities wanted to pass this information to the Americans as soon as possible, to do so would reveal that communications were being intercepted. The Americans would not appreciate the thought of their messages also being collected. However, the British had to take some course of action quickly. If the Central Powers became aware of intercepted messages and changed their encryption algorithms, the intelligence advantage owned by the British would be lost. This dilemma held Britain back from delivering the message to the Yanks for at least a month. Only when a solution to this problem had been found, had the decrypted telegram been sent to the Foreign Secretary and former British Prime Minister, Arthur Balfour. The The answer was that there were several copies of the telegram, each with slightly different languages. By transmitting the decoded version sent through the German embassy in Washington to Mexico, the British government hoped to hide the fact that the message had been intercepted, so that it would appear the document had been leaked in Mexico instead. On February 24th, the British released the Zimmermann telegram to President Woodrow Wilson. Shortly after, news of the telegram was published widely in the American press. The telegram had such an impact on American opinion that no other single cryptanalysis had such enormous consequences, said David Kahn, a cryptographic historian. On April 6, 1917, the United States Congress officially declared war on Germany and her allies. The Zimmermann telegram not only brought a turning point in the art of cryptography, but its polarizing meaning got the United States in the war, thus allowing history to be made for those of color in USA. The Harlem Hellfighters tells the story of a regiment of all African American soldiers who fought in World War I. The Hellfighters were given their name by the Germans due to the color of their skin and how fiercely they were seen fighting in battle. With the help of expertly drawn illustrations by Conan White, Max Brooks crafts an incredibly engaging and compelling story about not only the horrors of war, but also the discrimination these black soldiers faced from whites whilst fighting for the same country. While the book is based on actual events and people, Brooks does take certain creative liberties where he deems necessary to great effect. One such example is with his creation of the character of Wayne Edge, a hot-headed, new soldier to the regiment. Edge has often gotten into skirmishes with both friend and foe. He was very excited at the idea of being paid to kill those with a lighter skin tone than he and got angry after being saved from white soldiers by other white soldiers. He had an incredible sense of pride, and that pride has made him disgusted by the injustice he and his fellow soldiers faced. The author used Edge to convey the feelings of the other soldiers in the Hellfighters, as a fair portion tended to shy away from confrontation with their white counterparts. Edge really stood out as a character and added a lot to the story. The biggest obstacle the Hellfighters faced did not come from the front lines, though. Instead, it came from the constant discrimination. Every soldier in the regiment knew this going in, however they assumed it would get better after they had become battle-tested, seeing as everyone bleeds red. While most soldiers aligned with America discriminated against the Hellfighters, those not treated them well. France even honored some of them with medals. Brooks draws a parallel between the physical war the soldiers were fighting against Germany and its allies, with the war they were fighting to get the same treatment as white soldiers. The latter seems to bother the Hellfighters more than the actual war itself at times. Fighting was simple, however racial equality was not. Despite the acclaim the Harlem Hellfighters held in their list of firsts, they never were treated the same as white citizens back home. The Harlem Hellfighters are often forgotten about when in the grand scheme of the Great War, despite how important they were to the war effort and for minority rights. Brooks wrote this book to bring more attention to these amazing, black patriots. He succeeded in his purpose of spreading awareness about the Hellfighters, having his book be proclaimed as a New York Times bestseller. The book has received plenty praise, and it deserved every bit it got. The story and characters were very compelling, and the distinct, striking art by Conan White was able to add a whole new visual layer to pair with the excellent story weaving. The reader really feels for the plight of these soldiers. One of the few downsides of the visual novel, however, is the black and white coloring of the panels. The art style can make it difficult to tell the color of a character's skin. Conclusion. The history of encryption is one based around some of the most iconic times in human history. This ranges from ancient Egypt with the use of hieroglyphs, to the Assyrians with intaglio, and finally to World War I, with some of the most revolutionary ideas in cryptography to date, the Germans' use of an encryption system called Lotteriecypher, the British use of an encryption system known as Playfair cipher, and finally the American encryption system known as A1. Although none of these systems were monumental alone, when gathered together they brought about a new age of encrypted communications. If not for these three systems, the Zimmermann telegram incident could have gone in a much different manner. If the British had not intercepted the German message using their Room 40, the United States likely would not have entered the war when they did, and as a result, America's first all-African American regiment, the Harlem Hellfighters, may not have happened.